Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Carrot Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 1993 hood drama titled Menace II Society. Now, Menace II Society runs for 1 hour and 37 minutes long. It is directed by the Hughes brothers, Albert and Alan Hughes. It is produced by Darren Scott. The script was written by Tiger Williams, and the story was written by Albert and Alan Hughes and Tiger Williams. It is composed by QD3, the cinematography by Lisa Rinsler, and it was edited by Christopher Kofoid. I don't know if I pronounced his name right, but anyhow. Okay, the stars of the movie are Tyrin Turner, Larenz Tate, Jada Pinkett-Smith, Bill Duke, Charles S. Dutton, MC Eiht, Glenn Plummer, Clifton Powell, Arnold Johnson, Pooh-Man, Khandi Alexander, Julian Roy Doster, Clifton Collins Jr., and Samuel L. Jackson. With a lot of films that often describe themselves as hood films, films that are pretty much set in, like, the hood, whether it be in Compton, whether it be in Watts, whether it be Bedford Stuyvesant, anywhere. There's not one that compares with this classic from 1993, Menace to Society. Maybe the closest might be Boys in the Hood, which is definitely a classic if you ever wish to check that one out. This is the perfect example of the hardships and tribulations that manifest within the parameters of ghetto life, which includes street gangs, criminal activity, drugs, alcohol, street hookers, impoverished neighborhoods, systemic racism, and social injustices with the police. Everything in this movie is just all crammed there, thanks to the brilliant direction of the rookie directors Albert and Alan Hughes. Many people have often compared Menace to Society with the mega smash Boys in the Hood. But the difference is that Boys in the Hood actually has a much more tale with a more moralizing touch to it. It's still, heavy in its terms of gangsterism. There's a lot of shooting, there's a lot of violence in that movie, but it's taken by proportion due to it being more focused on a human drama. Now, Menace to Society is still a human drama, but it takes it to one level in advanced, meaning that it pulls no punches. Now, many people might think that this movie might promote gangsterism, might even set African Americans back because of its content. You know how movies these days want to paint a more positive image towards African Americans, which I give a lot of credit for the progression. But still, Menace to Society sparks a lot that is based entirely on realism. Now, I don't know if this is 100% accurate, because because you don't see drive-in shootings every day. But the intensity and the stress and the fear does take part on an almost everyday basis. And I think that's what the Hughes brothers did in Menace to Society. The refreshing thing that makes Menace to Society stand out is that it's not directed by some veteran in the field, but by two 20-year-old siblings named Albert and Alan Hughes, who made the film so natural that they are just right up there with the legends like Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, and Quentin Tarantino. And that's just not me being hyperbolic. I really think that the Hughes brothers really directed a movie that could be of similar veins to other gangster-themed movies, not necessarily centered around African Americans, but almost like Goodfellas and many of the other like gangster-themed movies like American Me, and movies like in that kind of perspective. It almost has a bit of a documentary-like settings taking place within the hoods of the United States. In this case, Watts, California, which has been in the past ridden with gangsterism. And is it just me just doing like checkmark observations? No. Because usually when I do a broadcast and when I review movies, I also go into research and I read about these kind of things. Am I always right? I never said I was. I only just read what's been told about me, about what's been told to me. And all I'm doing is just repeating it. I repeat the things to what people say. One of the things too about this movie is that unless you have virgin ears, you're too squeamish for swearing or gratuitous F-bombs, well,
don't watch it.
Exactly. Or if you are sensitive towards gratuitous violence,
don't watch it.
Exactly. Simply just please turn away now, or else you have been warned. Or if you bought your ticket expecting some saccharine sweet little film, then what the fuck were you thinking? Maybe you were just better watching The Happy Little Elf. Because I'm going to tell you something. Menace to Society, you're not going to find anything like that. This is hardcore. This is hardcore gang hood movie. And there's a lot to talk about. There's so much to talk about in so little time. But I'm not going to go on forever. I'm just going to break it down from observational standpoints. I don't know exactly what happens in Watts, California. I'm not from there. But from what I've been watching and the way how Albert and Alan Hughes directed this movie, and being that these guys are from that area, I think it's safe to say that the things that they directed truly stand out as real, even though it is a story of fiction. Maybe there might be some levels of dramatic licensing, but I think this really does paint a very accurate picture of what you would expect in Watts. So we have the opening scenes, which never hold back its horrifying demeanor. We are introduced to two young men. One of them is named Katie Lawson, aka Kane, played by Tyrin Turner, and his partner, Kevin Anderson, who goes by the name of O-Dog, played by Larenz Tate. The opening scene sees them walk into a convenience store, and they purchase some liquor, only to end up drinking the booze before paying for it. The owners, who were Korean, yeah, okay, that's stereotyping. Oh, a convenience store run by Asians. Well, they're particularly not very comfortable with the presence of these two boys. And the owner of the shop says a slightly snide remark towards them. Now, it's not racist, what they said. He said something like, "I pity your mother." Now, a remark like that, you could just brush it off and ignore him. Or, if you feel that the snide remark was too sensitive, just tell him to fuck off. But, no.
Okay.
They take it to a much more extreme level. Now, O-Dog is a trigger-happy, unapologetically short-tempered thug. What he does, like I said, goes to extremity. He actually kills the owners before making a run for it. He steals the money from their cash register, walks off with a case of booze, and also takes the surveillance tape with him. I told you they would take these things to extremities. So all this while, O-Dog just seems to take a pleasure of what he accomplished. Almost like a bit of a badge of honor on his part. In fact, for his own pleasures and fun, he invites his friends over to watch him commit this heinous crime. All just because the Korean owner said a little snide remark, which could have easily been handled if he would have just ignored or just flipped him the bird. But no, he kills him. He kills the Korean owner, takes off with some booze, some money, and the surveillance tape, and watches it like he's watching a Sunday home movie. Meanwhile, Kane is not really sure if what he did was a great idea. Could be for the fear of getting caught. But Kane kind of is a little bit different than him and the rest of his other gangster friends. And I will get more to him because he is the most important character in this movie. Pretty much Menace II Society chronicles the events and everyday life on the broken street of Los Angeles' Watts District, which is a hood that's, predominantly African Americans. And, let's face it. Let's face it, it's not exactly a pleasant place to raise a family. It's not to say that this movie is anything boring, because there hardly is any boring scenes, but many ghetto-based communities encounter these heartbreaking activities quite frequently. And there are times where you feel bad for the residents who have to deal with this lifestyle. There is much more that comes out of life in these hoods. Sure, there are quiet moments in this movie that deals with family gatherings, hanging around and staying by each other, whether good or bad, or even reconsidering leaving one's home to set positive goals for oneself, which is what this movie is about. There's a lot to talk about in this movie. It reflects on the unpredictable moments of ghetto life. Sometimes there are very quiet moments where you can hear a pin drop. It's not like every day there's drive-by shootings or gang activities. Some days you could just walk down the street and nobody will bother you. But then there are moments when things get so out of control, people just die in the streets without any signs of remorse, sympathy, or hesitation. You could just walk down the street and there's a drive-by shooting, you get shot, and all the shooter could say is, "Oops." Yeah, you could just die for just being at the wrong place at the wrong time. You could be an innocent bystander. And somebody might mistaken you for someone and they would shoot you and they would be like, it just wasn't your day, wasn't it, buddy?
The wrong place at the wrong time.
Wrong place at the wrong time, exactly. The characters depicted here are very well developed, with the main two being the aforementioned ones I talked about earlier. We have Cain. I mean, he doesn't come across as a squeaky clean guy with a squeaky clean, immaculate reputation, because hey, he's also was involved in this convenience store shooting with his partner O-Dog. And he is not exactly a likable character either. I mean, most of it you could say is because of the fact that, you know, his father was a hustler and a drug dealer, and his mother was a junkie, and his father also seemed to have been somewhat trigger happy. And of course, you know, gangster life might seem cool, but if you're not careful, you could die.
You could, eh? You could.
And meanwhile, his mother, of course, she died from an OD. So then he was raised by his very strict, very religious grandparents, who tried to, you know, do their best to make the best out of Cain. But his grandfather also says to him, and this is a very important question that his grandfather asks him, Cain, or KD, that's his real name, do you care if you live or die? But you see, underneath Cain's troubled life, he actually has something that none of his other homeboys have. He actually has a high school education. Now, these days, because people will say, oh, he's got a high school education, big whoop. But no, you know, with the value of a high school education, you could either, you know, advance your studies. It does open doors to potential jobs, or go into a trade or something. It may look like a small thing, but it's actually not. It's something actually that he's accomplished that the rest of his other friends never did. So with that, he has the potential to change his life for the better, and even has those voicing encouragement for him to do so. And it's not just his grandfather, but also a lady who also lives in Watts. Her name is Ronnie, played by Jada Pinkett-Smith, who wants to get out of the Watts district in Los Angeles and move to Atlanta. I don't know if that's always a great decision either. There's a lot of gangsters in Atlanta as well. Atlanta isn't exactly a safe haven either. Maybe it might be a little better off, but I don't think it's that much better. But still, I guess since she's got family who lives in Atlanta, and maybe she and Cain could just come together and try to maybe get out of the ghettos of Watts. And he has often at times considered it, but in the end, his grandparents are not going to take him by the hand into what decisions he wishes to make. Ronnie's not going to force any kind of decisions that he's got to make. He has to make his own choices, his own decisions of what he wants to do. Does he want to continue to live off of the streets of Watts and do all these terrible, heinous things with O-Dog and the rest of his other friends? Does he want the town of the district of Watts to take over his life? Or does he actually have the backbone to control his own life? We can't control him. He has to make decisions of his own, god damn it. That's where we get the whole question of, does he care whether he lives or dies? It's not a tough love question, but it is a decision that he has to do all on his own. It's up to him. He's 18. We can't take him. We can't hold his hand all the time. I mean, the thing with Kane is that this guy does have a potential to change, and he does have some hope of reparation. But by way of contrast, we have O-Dog, who feels that committing acts of violence and criminal activity and getting away with it makes him powerful. He is irreparable. He can't be repaired because he's pretty much a thug for life. He seems to enjoy watching camera footage of himself murdering the Korean shopkeepers. But O-Dog isn't the only person who embraces this type of lifestyle. Then you have a friend whose name is Sharif, played by Vonte Sweet, who seems at one hand entangled into a life of crime. He was incarcerated for 3 years, then he gets out, and now all of a sudden he has decided to convert to Muslim. Actually, Sharif's character was originally supposed to be played by the late rapper Tupac Shakur, who turned it down because he didn't see the connection between Sharif's life. Like, 1 minute the guy's a thug prisoner, and next thing you know, he gets out, and now he wants to practice Muslimism. Islam.
Muslim? No such thing.
Sorry about that. But he's a practicing Muslim.
Yeah, it's more like it. Yeah.
Which, I guess Tupac did have a point there. Like, where's the connection? On the one hand, he still wants to commit criminal activity, and next thing you know, he's praying for Allah. Well, nothing personal, but you just can't have it both ways. Or can you? I don't know. I don't think so. Aside from the hardcore characters, now they're not all entirely hardcore. There are a myriad of characters who offer a softer approach to the narrative. It's not all gangsters, but then again, Boys in the Hood also had strong moral fiber characters as well. Sympathetic ones. Even the lead character of Trey, played by Cuba Gooding Jr., is, sure, he's often been caught in the middle of gangsterism, but he actually does not really commit any type of crime. He's just like friends with pretty much the wrong people, and has often seen himself in the center of these kind of situations, and has often had come within close range, but never really actually got to that point. Which I guess is not the same as like his other two friends, like Doughboy, who played by Ice Cube, who's pretty much, the hood, while Compton is just what he calls home, and something that he's been kind of adjusted to. And then you have Ricky, I know I'm talking a lot about Boys in the Hood because there's a lot of comparison between Menace to Society and Boys in the Hood. And then you have Ricky, played by Morris Chestnut. You know, he thinks that that by pursuing in both academics, I should say, and also hopefully, you know, pursuing a career in the NFL, it would be his way of getting out of the hood. And yeah, like I said, just like Menace to Society, Boys in the Hood does also not end with a happy ending, which I will get to in a bit. I'm going to just talk about the more moralistic characters that are in this movie. You definitely have Kane's grandparents, played by Arnold Johnson and Marilyn Coleman, who preach quotes from the Bible, even though the stuff that they say come into one end of Kane's ear and come out the other. And then you have Ronnie, played by Jada Pinkett, who is very protective of her young son and also does not want him to copy or emulate any of the thugs that live in Watts. She wants to make her son into a model citizen by not getting him involved or let anyone encourage him any kind of gangster ways. And there's also a teacher of one of the characters, and he offers sage advice to Kane that being black in America isn't safe and that you will always be the prey. He also encourages Kane that Watts is not the place for you to stay. There's nothing for you there. And that he actually encourages Kane to leave the area. But of course, you know, a lot of stuff in his life happens to him that really that at times turns him away from the people who are giving him good advice. And I'm not going to say he does it to himself, but yes, the rage does seem to get the better of him, like when his cousin Harold gets killed, or when a pregnant lady named Elena, her boyfriend or cousin, you know, starts to become abusive towards her, and then he starts taking it on. He actually beats the crap out of the guy. And then, of course, we come to the climax where Kane eventually meets his fate when the cousin kills Kane. And then we ask the question, does he even care if he lives or dies? We never get a clear answer, but we can pretty tell that by the end of this movie, it's actually too late to have an answer. The exploration of ghetto life in Watts comes into getting a glance of what really happens in these areas, and it has a bit of a documentary vibe going for it. The narrative of the story makes you root for Kane the whole way through. Sometimes you don't always condone his actions because it often gets him into a lot of trouble until he meets his fate in the end. But you do hope that he makes the right decision so that he can leave behind his past and move forward with his life. Like I said, is Atlanta really that safe of a haven compared to Los Angeles? No. There's thugs, there's gangsterism in Atlanta. A lot of inner city places have that.
Of course.
Atlanta has a lot of hoods and gangster activity there too. I don't understand why people think Atlanta is the holy grail of a safe haven city, because it isn't. There's a lot of crime in Atlanta.
I'm here.
It all boils down to the climax, which will likely be an emotional one for sure. But overall, Menace to Society is a successful ghetto film that's both real and gritty, and it doesn't leave any stone unturned. If you can handle the grim details of this movie, I think you might enjoy this film. It really has something you have to see for yourself. You will be mesmerized. You might be inspired. And maybe even possibly educated. So when all that's said and done, if I was to give this movie a scale out of 10, I would give Menace to Society. I don't do this very often, but I truly think this movie deserves a 10 out of 10. I don't give 10 out of 10s that often, but I think this one really nailed it. And like I said, this is coming from, not from a veteran director. No, we're looking at a pair of young 20-year-olds named Albert and Alan Hughes. And we also were treated to great performances. The cinematography was excellent. The location shoots were really well paced. Were there any flaws to this movie? Yeah, but they were pretty much easily forgiven, because the good far outweighs the bad. I highly recommend you to see this one. So I guess this ends my ride review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my YouTube channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. But just remember the 3 simple rules. Be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments. And I'll be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Cartwright saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.